Welcome to Season 5 of Measure Twice, Cut Once. This whole season is an exploration into behind the scenes of not just quilting, but building a creative business that truly lights you up. As someone who's navigated the exciting, sometimes bumpy world of turning a passion into a profession, I'm excited to pull back the curtain and share my own experiences. Some episodes will be just me, diving deep into my personal journey, while others will feature guests who are also navigating the world of creative entrepreneurship. We'll explore the nitty-gritty of building a creative business, the lessons learned, and the unexpected challenges that come with transforming your craft into a thriving enterprise. And don't worry, I'm not leaving storytelling behind. Instead, I'll be weaving them into the conversations about what it takes to grow a business while staying true to your creative spirit. So whether you're dreaming of starting your own business or you just love hearing about creative entrepreneurship, this season is for you. Today, I'll be chatting with Tracy Beavers. I first met Tracy in a business group that we were both members of. She has a background in sales and marketing in corporate America. She has over time built her own absolutely independent coaching and training business. She became my business coach, and we've grown into friendship. Tracy has such a genuine heart to help and encourage, and it shows all the time. So whether you already have an established business or you're just considering something outside the 9 to 5, I think you'll want to hear what Tracy's got to say about establishing your why and knowing your worth. Hello, Tracy, and welcome to the studio.
Hey, Susan, thanks so much for having me.
This is a little shift out of my norm, Tracy. I don't know if you listen to my podcast or not, but typically I talk with other crafters. But in recent weeks, I've been focusing a little more on business building. And you and I have worked together. You've been my business coach. And so I thought, hey, I know Tracy would have some great things to say. There are lots of folks listening who are doing the same thing. They're entrepreneurial. They're building a small business. They're often working from home. So give me a few maybe credentials. What has brought you to where you are? Where do you think your voice is?
That's a great question. So I was raised in the generation where you go to high school, you graduate, you go to college, you graduate, you get the W-2 job, and you stay there for 40 years, and then you get to retire, and then you get a gold watch and a retirement party and a cake and a pension. And somewhere along the way, companies started to downsize, resize, restructure, right size, whatever you want to call it, and people started getting laid off. And this started happening around 2005. So what I decided to do was, after having been downsized, after having worked for toxic bosses, after having jobs that felt like it was a jacket that felt like it was 2 sizes too small, it just didn't, nothing ever really felt quite right. I decided to take my 20 years of experience and dive into coaching. And I came to that realization through some really good friends. I was in a women mastermind, and I was at that point with corporate again, where I just kept coming back to not being happy. And I was at another not happy point again. And I kept thinking, is this all there is? And they were like, Tracy, you're so good in business. You're so good in sales. People were always asking me, and I just didn't realize it until they pointed it out. They said, people are always asking you, have you been so successful in sales? How are you gaining so much market share for the companies you're working for? How are you getting millions in production in your portfolios? And it just felt like breathing to me. So it didn't feel like I was doing anything special, but apparently it's not something that everybody is born with. And so they helped me realize that because I basically had demand for what I was doing, which was people asking me all the time for help, that I could build a business around it. And so that's how I ended up here. I decided to start building my coaching practice alongside my full-time job and my family. I actually built 3 businesses alongside my full-time job and my family. And looking back on it now, I'm not sure how I did that and kept my sanity, but it enabled me to create an exit strategy from corporate. A lot of people are disenchanted with corporate, and they've had realization of, oh my gosh, is this all there is? But they are too afraid to leave, and they don't know how to do it without just quitting altogether. And that
And
wasn't an option for me.
no, and I
You
think
know,
you
I had,
hit, though, upon a particular really important point, which is that you found this cross-section of what you're good at and what comes naturally to you and what others need. And I feel like
yeah,
that's kind of the magic zone, right? It's a bit like a Venn diagram. You have all this
Mm,
knowledge and stuff, and then you have people that are wanting to learn or needing to know things. And wherever those intersect, there's a bit of
mhm.
magic going on. So you found that happy place.
Yes, I did. And it's funny that it took other people to point it out to me, but sometimes we can't see those things for ourselves.
That's really true because we understand what's going on in our own heads, but
Mhm.
that's not always what's going on in other people's, right?
Exactly. And then there's the, "Oh my gosh, will people actually pay me for this?" There's that part of it. Getting over that fear of, "Can I really do this?" And then just jumping in and having faith and knowing that I believe strongly, and I know you do too, Susan, that we were all given gifts and talents by God, and his intention for us is to use those to further the benefit of humanity. And I firmly believe that when we align ourselves appropriately with the universe and what we've been given, that the universe just catches us. It just opens up and things start to work and things start to flow without any real rhyme or reason. People will say, "I don't know how this worked out. It must have been coincidence." And I'm like, "No, it's not.
It's
You
true.
aligned yourself the way you should be aligned." And so things just start to flow and happen, and it's interesting.
Conversely, it is true that when you try to force something or push something that you're not ready for, or that is the coat that's two sizes too large or too small, that is a sign that this is not the right moment, or perhaps you need to pivot a little bit, right? Because that can also be true if it's too hard or if it feels too unnatural or too uncomfortable or goes against your grain, it's not the
Yeah.
right thing.
Exactly, exactly. Every time I feel like I'm trying to stick a square peg in a round hole, I'm like, "Okay, all right, hold on." And I just have to back up from it and say, "Okay, God,
Like, I can take a hint.
I know what you want me to do here, but this is evidently not it."
Yes. The way that I got to know you, Tracy, was also through business associates and groups that we are both part of. And you stood out in that crowd because you are naturally a friendly, encouraging person. That is your gift. And so you have turned this into, okay, since this comes easily to me, let me show you how to do it. And you're all about creating visibility for our small businesses. What are some of the tenets of being visible?
That's a good question, especially in the online space, because coming from building businesses at a corporate, local, in-person level, if you will, and switching gears into building in the online space, I thought it would be people make it look easy, and I thought it was gonna be a lot easier than it was. But what I realized was the key to it is visibility, and that takes on many forms. Um, Being visible on social media, finding the platform where your ideal clients are hanging out,
Mhm.
and creating content that is uh, doesn't have anything to do with them buying anything from me. Rather, my approach and the reason why I've been so successful in sales for so many years is because I take the sale out of the equation and I don't think about the transaction itself. What I think about is making a connection, a very genuine, human, kind, warm connection with another warm, kind human,
Mhm.
and finding that common ground and finding and building that relationship and finding out what they need, and then being of service and bringing value to them in some way. That to me is easier than ever thinking about myself or, "Hey, sign up for my program," or anything that would be self-serving. And so when I've all these years when I have focused on just that, it's always come back to me. So being visible on a social media platform to me means showing up with content that attracts my ideal clients to me because it is educational, it is valuable, it is what they need and what they want and what they're looking for. And then people get curious about you when they start seeing you often enough and they begin to follow you. And then they want to know you better, which leads to most of the time them landing on your email list, which you and I both know is one of the foundational pieces to a successful online business is having an email list. So the goal of being visible is to lead that person through your sales funnel in a very genuine relational way, knowing that they'll find their spot in the funnel at some point, and then being on your email list and being visible in their inbox with regular weekly content, emailing ideally once a week, to stay top of mind. Visibility also has to do with being a guest on a podcast like I'm doing right now with you. This is creating visibility for me and awareness of me with your audience, and I never would have met them otherwise, probably, you
It's
know?
true. It's true.
So it's just figuring out where are the places that I can show up and add value and be of service. And that will gain more eyes on you, more awareness of you, which is what I call visibility.
So it's much less, I think of the home shopping channel of years past, right? Where you just had a period of time that you were bombarded with information and pushy sales and incredible
Yeah.
deals, and this is going away tomorrow. It's much
Right.
less about that. And it looks more like, here I am. Here's
Mhm.
what I know. Here's
Mhm.
what I could help you with.
Mhm.
Do you want to get into a conversation? And you make the offer, you hold out the hand, and then
Mhm.
you just sit back and relax. And it makes
Mhm.
it so low pressure. And I know when I got to know you, Tracy, I was thrilled to find you because I've talked to other coaches,
Yeah.
marketers, etc. before. And that to me was the forced feeling that we were talking about earlier. I thought, I can't do that. I cannot be pushy. I cannot. So this
Right.
way of creating relationship, as you say, is
Mhm.
absolutely natural. It's being in the online world, it's like having a virtual storefront. And so what you want to do is take the face of the business, you, and show up in the places where you have something to share. And then
Yep.
people can take it or
Exactly
leave
right.
it. Yeah.
Exactly right. And we never know where these connections are going to lead. That's why I take the transaction out of it, because when I meet someone, when I'm networking online and I'm meeting people, what's exciting to me is, what do they want to be a client of mine? I don't know. Or do we want to collaborate in some way? I'd be on their podcast. They could come into my Facebook group and do a live training, and we each gain visibility and an audience that way. Or do they want to be referral partners? I have a lot of people that they don't have a need for me as a coach right now, but they believe in what I do so much that they will send me people as they encounter them that need a good coach. And so we just never know when we make connections in life, where they're going to lead. And that's where we have to just be of service, like I said, be of service and give value, and have faith that the right people are going to be attracted to you and sign up for your stuff, and the money's going to come and the collaborations are going to come and all of it's going to work out. But
The door's
yeah.
open.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, does it matter particularly what you offer? Does it need to be digital, or is a physical product easier, or a service easier, or does it matter at all?
It's a really great question. For me, service is easier than product, but that's just me personally. But I know many people who have had great success in the in-person, local brick and mortar space with product. But visibility for a business is really all the same. It's it's taking your client, your ideal client, from awareness and into your sales funnel and having them find their spot in your funnel. As I said, whether that's a client or a referral partner or a collaboration partner or something like that. And it's really the same no matter if they have a brick and mortar local business or they are an online coach like I am that has services globally. Visibility is all the same. You just have to find the avenues of visibility that are going to get you the most return on your time, would be the key.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And I'm thinking as you're saying that, I'm thinking perhaps those of you listening that maybe don't have a business and don't think of this in terms of sales funnel. That's one of the phrases that we've used. But think of it, if you're a quilter like me and maybe you live in a very small rural town, and
Mhm.
maybe you're not looking to build a digital empire or grow a course or anything like that, but maybe you just need to find clients beyond your physical radius of miles. And so your
Right.
visibility comes in the terms of perhaps entering quilts in shows, or again, the newsletter idea that Tracy presented, that if you get out there in front of people and show what you can do on a regular basis and keep yourself top of mind, that was a great
Right.
phrase too. Like, people won't remember you from one year to the next. It's important to keep those gentle and authentic connections, because then
Yeah.
you're who they think of when whatever you offer comes up.
Exactly. And our world has gotten so crowded and loud and noisy that what you're mentioning is so critical for business success, because the things like TikTok and some of the social media platforms where the videos are very short, studies, recent scientific studies have shown that it's lowered our attention span that much more. People
Hmm.
truly want to consume something in 3 to 5 seconds. And so we've got to have all of the ways. We've got to figure out what are the ways we can stay visible and top of mind, and we have to maximize those and be consistent with them. Because the minute I stop showing up in someone's inbox, or the minute I stop going to the quilt show, whatever it is that I'm doing that's gaining me the visibility and the traction, the minute I take my foot off the gas is when they'll get their head turned and go to someone else.
Which is not to say, however, that you must always be pedal to the metal going great guns either. That's especially
Right.
for an entrepreneur or a solopreneur, as I like to call myself, that can be important too, to know what your pacing is. So you and I have talked in our planning sessions. I'll have quarters of the year that focus on different things because I can't
Right.
always be out there presenting free workshops in order to build my email list or always be out there creating quilts to hang in shows. So some of this is a bit cyclical. I wonder
Right.
if you have any tips, Tracy, for dealing with, I've never heard this term before, but I call it marketing fatigue. So when you are a producer of TikTok videos or YouTube episodes or even blog posts and you're just
Mhm.
weary, what are some ways that you can rejuvenate or take a rest or build
Mhm.
cycles into that production?
The one of the best ways that helps me is figuring out what is going to be my anchor piece, what I call an anchor piece of content. So first of all, it's important to decide what kind of content do you want to produce and how often do you want to produce it. So is it going to be something like what I do is I offer a live weekly training in my Facebook group every Thursday at 11:30. That's my anchor piece. Other people like yourself, you have a podcast that comes out once a week or twice a month, however often it is. But for me, when I first started, I did feel that fatigue and I felt like I had to be everywhere all the time. One piece of advice I got that still holds true is find in terms of social media platforms, find the social media platform that where your ideal clients are hanging out, where you feel comfortable and go all in on that platform before you go to any others. For example, I started on Facebook and I went all in, just deep dive into Facebook, and I was on Instagram, but not really interacting. Now you would see posts and things like that, but it was repurposed content that I had already used on Facebook. So for me, focusing on one platform at a time, and then figuring out what is my anchor piece of content going to be. And like I said, for me, it's a weekly live. And from that anchor piece, all other content is created. So you're not having to think of something new every single day. I have a free training that I do that's been very popular, and it's about how you can create 90 days of content in only 30 minutes. And so you essentially just brain dump 12 topics, which gives you 12 weeks, which is 90 days, and you have
Mhm.
one topic per week. So that could be your anchor topic for that would be my weekly live topic that I'm going to talk about in my Facebook group. And from that, everything else is born. So that content that I wrote for my weekly live, we can pull little tidbits out of for 2 to 3 social media posts. We can pull content from it to create a written blog. We can take that video that is not only in my Facebook group, but also streamed onto my YouTube channel and pull that into the blog to make it even that more robust for SEO by having a video tied to it. I could very easily take that content and repurpose it into a short podcast episode. So instead of sitting here feeling like I've got to create, if I want to post on Facebook 3 times a week, that I've got to create 3 magnificent pieces of content that each talk about something different, I'm creating one anchor piece of content and I'm using that to give birth to everything else. That's the middle part of the spoke and or the hub, and you've got all the spokes coming off of it.
Oh, I
So that
hear
takes
a couple
energy.
gems in that, Tracy. For one, I think someone once said, work smarter, not harder.
Oh
I
my
hear
gosh.
that theme running through it. And I also hear the idea that if you pre think some of this and plan it a little bit, not only does it get you ahead of the game, but it helps whatever you're presenting to be much more cohesive and thematic, right? People know what you're about. You're doing it on purpose instead of just willy-nilly thinking of
Right.
random posts. Oh, there's all the sense in the world in that. And of course, you talked about the smart ways of using one idea, one thought and using it in multiple ways. So smart.
Mhm. It just preserves the energy, the mental energy, because it can be so draining to come up with content. But we have to build I am all about building a business with ease. That's one of the things I say a lot. Things need to be simple. That doesn't mean they are not valuable, and it doesn't mean that they're not worth what you're paying for them. But what it does mean is that it's there's not a lot of fluff in it.
Mhm.
It's easy, simple. Let's build this business with ease, and that's one of the ways I do that.
So in a very roundabout way, you very much answered my question, which was I was asking, how do you rest? How do you get rest from this fatigue
Sorry.
of producing? But no, but you answered it, Tracy, because you said, don't get into that place in the first place. This is how you need to handle and manage your production and time so that you don't burn out because you shouldn't
Right.
have to go through that and then rest up from it. So it makes
Exactly.
all the sense in the world.
Oh, yeah.
So, if you are a beginner, if some
Mhm.
listening are just getting started doing this, like where would a beginner start? Should they take your first idea, which was find where your ideal customer or audience is? Like, how would
Mhm.
they know what to start that would produce some good return and really some traction or momentum fairly quickly?
That's a great question. It really depends on what they wanna do. So if we're talking
Mm.
about someone like you and I that is building a business in the online space, the first thing they need to do is decide who do they wanna serve and how do they wanna serve them, and what is the transformation they're gonna get for that person. Because that's the foundational piece because then they know, okay, who is my ideal client? What is the messaging that I'm bringing to them? What can I promise that I'm going to help them with? And then you think through, okay, where can I find this person? For me, my ideal clients are hanging out in entrepreneurial groups on Facebook. Very rarely are they on LinkedIn. They are a lot, in large part, they are on Instagram. So I had to figure out where can I find these people and how can I start networking? Because it doesn't matter if we have an online business or a brick and mortar in person business and we're building at a local level, networking and making those connections is really key to getting the message out and spider webbing out into your business. So if you're talking about someone because I've built many businesses on the local level here in Little Rock, Arkansas, where I was working for so long in corporate, building businesses as a mortgage loan officer and building my own portfolio there and title insurance and real estate and things like that. And so it's the same in that I need to figure out who do I serve? How do I serve them? And what's the transformation I'm gonna give them? And
So,
then
those,
where can I find those people?
yeah. And those, on the face of it, at first, they seem like very deep questions and a little bit of hard work, honestly, to think through
Yes.
some of those answers. But it so pays off because then you're not
Mhm.
wasting effort throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something will stick, right? If you know what you have to offer and who you want to
Mhm.
offer it to and what is the problem you can solve, then all the content that you produce, whether it's writing or speaking or videography or whatever, will speak
Mhm.
to that and people will shortly know what you stand for and who you are.
Yeah. And here's the thing that I want people to understand that these businesses are always evolving. Unless we are purchasing a turnkey franchise, like a McDonald's restaurant or a Chick-fil-A restaurant, where they basically have everything done and all you gotta do is pay your franchise fee, hire your employees, and show up. There's no real decisions you have to make because our businesses will evolve. When I first started, I just said, "Okay, I wanna be a business and sales coach." I knew I wanted to serve primarily women, and in the beginning, I was more of a generalist, but it has evolved into honing in on my skills of sales, marketing, creative solutions, visibility, email list growth, that kinda thing. But if I had I guess my message is don't wait to get started. Think it through and have some idea of what you wanna do, but get started because the more action you take, the more clarity you're going to get, and the business is never really going to be quote unquote done and perfect.
Oh boy, that's powerful, Tracy. The more action you take, the more clarity you'll get. So important to think through these deep questions, but don't get hung up because you
Right.
don't think you have the perfect answer,
Right.
because it may change, it may pivot a little, it may flex and
Yeah.
evolve. Yeah, good
And it's
point.
never going to be perfect. You know that, Susan, from being in this space for so long.
And it would be boring if it always stayed the same. So that's
Right.
not a bad thing. That's not a bad
Right.
thing. It keeps us on our toes. How important, Tracy, do you think is the entrepreneur's why? Like, when can that hold you up? When can that be the crutch that you lean on? How important is knowing what your why is?
It's so critical to understand the reason you're doing this. Because I say this all the time, being an entrepreneur is a freaking roller coaster. Some days everybody wants to buy what we're selling, and other days nobody can remember our name. And it can be lonely, especially in this online space when I'm sitting here in my house with my laptop and it's just me and the dog. Whereas used to, when I was in a sales role for a corporation, I was out and about all the time, meeting people, networking in person, and doing all that stuff. And so it's been a mindset shift for me as well. And so when I have times where I am saying to myself, what are you doing? You can't coach your way out of a paper sack. Who do you think you're going to help? And then I have to remind myself that I have helped and coached hundreds of entrepreneurs to success. And why am I doing this? And for me, it's a multifaceted answer. In the beginning, it was my why was I wanted to get out of corporate America and I
Mhm.
was looking for a solution to do that. And then the part of the facet of the why is because I want to earn a good income for my family. Do I need to be wealthy beyond measure? Not in a monetary stance, from a monetary standpoint, but certainly from a happiness
Mhm.
standpoint. Yeah, but we did need a certain amount of money for our family. So that was part of my why. And then the other part of my why was coming back to what we were talking about at the beginning with really feeling a very, I don't know if I'm picking the right words here, a very heavy responsibility to use the gifts and talents that I was given to help as many other people as possible. And so if I come back to that multifaceted why of, okay, Tracy, why are you doing this? Okay, I don't want to work for anybody else. That's
Mhm.
really important to me. I want to make a good living for my family so that our kids can get through college without a lot of debt and we don't have to live an extravagant lifestyle, but it sure would be fun to be able to travel a few times a year. I would also add to that now that we're talking about all the facets of it. My parents are getting older and I'm 2 hours away from them. I could not work for a corporation and hold a job for very long if my parents suddenly needed me. So this gives me location freedom. And then coming back to the all of that those things under the umbrella of, how dare I not do this? How dare I not take what I know and that can make a difference for other people? And it also, I speak to this sometimes in keynote speeches and different public speaking events, but we need to consider the ripple effect of our work within that why. Because a lot of times we think when I'm speaking to real estate agents, they'll say, I'm just a realtor. And I'm like, hold on a second. You have to consider the ripple effect of your work. Okay, yes, on the face of it, you're helping people buy and sell homes. But if you look through the ripple effect of everything that you do with your scope of work, you're touching a mortgage lender and their family. You're touching a termite company and their family, a homeowner's insurance company and their family and their employees. You are helping a family get into a house. And those children that now have a safe place to live are going to go to school with confidence and happiness. And that's going to ripple into the kids that they're in class with. We can't just sit here and say, I'm just a quilter or I'm just a coach or I'm just a whatever. We have to, when we're thinking about why are we doing this, consider the ripple effect it's going to have on the rest of the people that are around us and and how many blessings that can give.
So true. I don't think we can even overstate that because there's so many ripples that we have no idea of and may never know. I actually
Exactly.
had a kind of crystal clear object lesson of this a few weeks back. I was live streaming one day. So this is quilting that I'm live streaming onto YouTube and Facebook. And it was one of those Murphy's Law sort of days. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong on camera, right? And it's getting more and more frustrating as it goes on. And at about the 2 hour mark, I finally called a halt and said, I'm going to have to finish this later. And I gave some of the reasons and so forth. But the magical part about it was viewers started typing in responses during the chat while I was still live, and then emails that I received afterwards. And the effect of me showing that very real day and how I could resolve those problems and how I thought through them was remarkable. So again, my field is quilting, so it had to do with thread breakages and bobbin tension and things like that. But it encouraged so many people because so often what we see is pretty on the surface, right? It's been edited and polished and the glare has been taken off it. And
Yeah.
so just that act of being vulnerable and authentic was really meaningful to people. So that
Yeah.
adding all of that into your why, that's what keeps you going. When you do have a tough day like that, you're like, people need to see this. People need to see
Yes.
this. It's reality. It's life.
Yeah. And it's endearing. I had a similar situation. It's happened to me a couple of different times. Our dog is one of my favorite people. And with the kids gone and being empty nesters, he's the only one that I have any companionship with during the day because my husband's at work. But there have been so many occasions when I have gone live on Facebook and he has some sort of shenanigans going on in the background. And I literally have to be like, hold on, wait a minute. I'll be right back. One day, seriously, he had to go outside and go potty so bad that he was not going to stop scratching at the back door. And I thought he was going to take the screen door down because he's 80 pounds. And I literally held up my finger in the camera and I said, okay, hold on just a second. I've got to go let the dog out. And in my brain, I'm mortified. I'm like, this is so unprofessional. But do you know how many people reached out to me and said, this is the best thing I've seen all day. And thank you so much. And I was just like, okay. And so then when my clients say to me, I can't go live. What if it's not, what if I don't have the perfect hair and the perfect outfit and the perfect this and I'm like, you're talking to the girl whose dog interrupted her live
Yep,
training.
yep.
And they're like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
And it's hard. I'm a recovering perfectionist. So it's hard for me to let go of that and say that's better. It's not only okay, but it's better to show people that reality. That's what's encouraging and lets them know it's okay to make a few missteps
Mhm.
in the
Yep.
journey.
Yep, exactly.
Oh my goodness, so much goodness. Now I'm getting all excited. I'm going to go forth and do great things after this. But before we go, Tracy, I wonder if you've got a little gem of wisdom that you could leave with our listeners. It can be about business or just about life or kids or, in fact, dogs if you want to.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you 2 if that's okay. One, I was reminded of today because I have a friend of mine who is going through a tough time personally, and my grandfather, whom I adored, lived to be 98 years old, and he always said, "One day at a time." And so when I feel overwhelmed, like I can't breathe, everything's just swirling, I remember my grandfather, very kind, gentle, the epitome of a gentleman, who would say, "One day at a time, Tracy. We're doing this one day at a time." And then the other thing I want to leave people with is something that everybody can relate to, no matter if you are building a business or not. When I have days that are not super, I am a positive, happy, sunshiny person 80 to 90% of the time. It's just who I am. But I do have days where I feel down, I feel sad, I start to get up in my head, I start to tell myself things that are not nice, that are not positive. And so I created an exercise called recognize, refrain, and repeat. And I teach it to my clients now. And in less than 1 minute, you can literally rewire your brain into something more positive. So you recognize the negative thought for what it is. And most of the time, it's based on emotion and fear. It is
Mhm.
not based on fact, not a stitch of fact in there.
Mhm.
And then you reframe it into something positive that is based on fact. And then you repeat the positive statement 3 to 5 times. And for me, what I find is by doing that repetition, it just washes over my brain and begins to calm me and begins to bring me back to the truth, not the fear, not the lie that I'm trying to tell myself, not all the emotion, but the fact that no, I can have an impact on other people's lives. Sometimes we say to ourselves, who am I to do this business? And I come back to how many people I've helped and the transformations I've gotten for them, which is based on fact.
Yes.
And then I'll repeat it. So just recognizing it is the first and most important step, because sometimes we don't recognize how badly we're talking to ourselves,
Yes.
and then reframing it into something positive that's based on fact, and then just repeating it several times. And it's just soothing to me.
Okay, so let me repeat this back to myself. You recognize, and then you reframe, and then you repeat. So if our listeners want to take that up for themselves, where can they find out more about that, Tracy? I know you. You've got a little freebie to have to do with that.
I do. I have a little training that'll help them. It's a short video and a worksheet. And they can go to tracybeavers.com/repeat and grab that. And it's going to help them rewire their brain for success.
Perfect. That will be so helpful. Thanks so much, my friend, for tuning in.
Thank you so much for having me, Susan. And I am just so excited to be here. I can't even tell you.
I hope you gleaned a ton of ideas from Tracy. She's the real deal when it comes to business growth and coaching. If you're looking for some help in this area, be sure to check out where to follow her in the show notes. She has a whole lot of resources available just for the asking, plus a Facebook group with free training each and every week. And let us know what you thought of this episode too by scrolling to the very bottom of the show notes and leaving a rating and review. We love to read your comments. Listen, if you have friends who you think would enjoy this podcast as well, would you take a moment and share it with them? You can share this particular episode, or all episodes, and easy choices of where to listen can be found at podcast.stitchedbysusan.com. I'm Susan Smith, and until next time, may your sorrows be patched and your joys be quilted.